Okay, so here is today's job. Basically cleaning up leaves and trimming hedges and freshening up the mulch. Just trying to get some color and clean up the leaves and just the mess right before the Thanksgiving holiday. As you can see, there's a ton of leaves. We got some hanging baskets there we're going to change out, and some other flowers on the property that I'm going to change out. So let's get right into trimming these hedges here. And yeah, that's how I started the recording on this. I trimmed for 3 minutes and it looked like this. So it turned out good, but the darn camera fell over. And then there's me doing the walk of shame because the phone fell over. This bit of this job was recorded on the phone again, and that's why it tragically fell over there. But here's at least me finishing up this little hedge here. It's a shame I didn't get the full bit because I could have made a time lapse or something out of it, but oh well. Yeah, I did, while this is going, and it's just the same thing, I did end up getting a GoPro. So the part 2 of this cleanup that you're watching now will have the GoPro camera, and I'll be able to do a little bit more as far as the editing goes. I'm just too limited on this phone, so I went ahead and bought the only GoPro that they had at the store. I went to 2 different places and nobody had one, and I got to the last one and they had a GoPro 8, and I was like, okay, gimme. So because I can't stand editing on this phone, it's tragic, and I'm gonna rant about it this entire video, so just be prepared. But anyway, let's talk about this cleanup a little. So yeah, pretty much just trimming hedges, and at the end there you saw me cutting out the monkey grass, the ornamental grasses, the lilies and stuff that are out of season, and I just go straight with the hedge trimmer and cut across them because, they're so thin and stuff, they won't really bind up once they're out of season and wilted. It just cuts right through it. You will have trouble where the hedge trimmer misses some of that. Watch me looking at the camera because I'm paranoid that it's going to fall over again. But yeah, when it's wilted and stuff, the hedge trimmer will really easily cut through it. And if there's a lot of monkey grass or lilies or something, I'll actually switch to my combi system with the articulating head, and I'll put it at a 90-degree angle, and I'll almost use it like a weed eater. And the reason I don't just go straight to using a weed eater is because it flings stuff, and it's just a little bit too messy. And I feel like you get a little bit cleaner cut when you use just the hedge trimmer. I will, however, go back and use the weed eater to clean up the stragglers that you get from those ornamental grasses, because the hedge trimmer, won't cut it's kind of hard to cut the things that lay flat. So I'll just go back with the hedge trimmer and tidy up like a real quick pass, but it's a lot cleaner to do it that way. It is an extra step, but it's just my preference because it's cleaner. So yeah, these hedges that I'm trimming here on screen now, you technically shouldn't shear these. I know I'm doing the exact opposite, and I'm shearing them as I speak, but not the hollies, but the big round ones there on the other side of the hollies. The problem is I could selectively prune those, but they're just too big for the space to begin with. Quite frankly, you could really cut them in half and be better off, and then I could do like some selective pruning. But that's a lot of extra charge, because it's a lot of time to go through and do a proper selective pruning. One of the big problems I run into is that I come up to these jobs and I have in my head like, ooh, if we do this way, it could look so amazing. And then you get into discussions of what it will take to get that done, and sort of the whys and stuff. And like, The problem with quote unquote buy the book and best practices, the problem with that is that once you get so far into it, like you're just talking and talking, it literally just becomes that to the customer, right? If I go through and explain all the benefits of selective pruning, and I go to every single shrub in their garden and I say, we could do this to these, and we can go over to your monkey grasses and we can do this to those. Oh, and you got some, weeds growing in your mondo grass. You know what we can do for that? We can go through, I can sit there and I can ramble about all these little details of what is quote unquote right. And I've done that before, especially in the beginning, like whenever I was really, really studying and hammering down on sort of best practices and what's proper. I would just ramble to customers for so long about how we could best do this. And, I had two mentalities when doing that. First and foremost, I wanted to show them that I knew sort of what would be best. But then also I wanted to give them a chance to learn a little bit, and if they wanted to, tackle it on their own. Because sometimes I've realized it's very rare, but you'll find these people who, if you have a discussion with them, and they're people who like to talk and learn and grow as people, if you talk to them about something that you're passionate about and you're interested in, that kind of bleeds over into them. Because these people that are like learners, the like very, very low percentage of people who genuinely want to learn, if you get into something with them, they will actually kind of pick up, and roll with it and kind of get into it too. But I've noticed it's hard to find those people. So I've learned that the rambling thing of every little detail and, explaining by the book, right, is a little bit too much, and nobody really fully cares to hear that. But on top of that, nobody really wants that. All right, so here's a holly shrub that I love to do. And you'll notice a rabbit come out of the bottom right here in just a few minutes. Just keep your eye down there. And I'll actually do a slow-mo here too. You see him go? Yeah. And see, with all my equipment running and my headphones on, my ear protection, like I had no idea that even came out. So when I was editing this, I was like, what in the world was that just came out of the bottom of the screen? But I love doing these little like compact holly shrubs. Okay, that's what we're saying now. They're holly shrubs. Anyway, I love these compact holly shrubs because they're just so clean, man. Like, you can just get such sharp edges. I do have a bare patch, which you may see in the close-up that I do. I can't tell, but right in the middle, because I was actually, somehow I timed it. The last time I did the cleanup here, they were getting her house pressure washed, and they actually sprayed the pressure washer right down the center of the shrub and really damaged the middle of it. It's coming back, but it's pretty darn slow. But yeah, I love doing these things, man. If I could only trim these and boxwoods, that I would just make that my whole business, because it's so satisfying when you get done with it. Even if you're just taking just a tiny little bit off, like I'm doing here, it's hard to beat that satisfying end result, If you ever get these shrubs that are like really, really close to the house, and most of the time they are, because here you go, you're close up. Nice. So like you'll see me on these in the line here. They're really close to the house and you got all this wiring, so you have to be careful of it. You actually turn your hedge trimmer at a different angle. So like you see the angle I'm holding there, where the flat side is parallel with the shrub. flat side is still parallel with that side of the shrub. But then whenever I go to the back, the flat side is facing away from the shrub, and that's because the big bulky part, the top, where you hold the trimmer, would actually bump up against the house, and it's just kind of cumbersome. So if you do it the opposite way in the back, you do kind of have to trim it a little differently. It's hard to explain. It's a different angle, but you pretty much face it the opposite way that you would while you're doing the rest of the hedge trimming job. So yeah, these are more of these hollies, and I actually tried on these back in the spring. I cut them back quite a bit, and they look so much better, but they're still not perfect. And it drives me crazy because now, being in the winter, I don't want to cut them too far because, you know, they're not going to get any recovery growth, and they'll be ugly for a lot longer. And if we get a super harsh winter, okay, here's a close-up of like how much I'm taking off, which is not a lot. You know, this is a real quick and dirty cleanup on this one just to get it ready for Thanksgiving, but just a little example of how much we're taking off, which is not a lot. And yes, I do need to sharpen my hedge trimmer blades. I have been running that thing into the ground the last few weeks. It's been ridiculous. But anyway, what was I talking about for that? Okay, so what I was talking about was I didn't want to keep doing a hard cut back to reshape these and get them in like a perfect straight line. You know, that's sort of the end goal, like long-term type thing. But if I do it now, it's just going to get too cold. Like if we magically get one of these harsh winters, you know, it would be pretty risky to the plant. But yeah, this will be the last shrub that I trim, and we're just going to finish that up and get on to the next part. Okay, so it's time to start blowing out the leaves, and I actually really like the design of this landscape because it's got that wall in the back of it, and you can actually get behind the landscape to blow out the leaves, which is very uncommon. You know, it's useful to a sense, right? Because you can blow out from behind the landscape, but you still get leaves behind that wall, you know, and I guess it's it's fine because the wall kind of funnels them out, but either way, it's still pretty nifty to be able to blow the leaves from behind the landscape. You don't really get to do that most of the time, but let's talk about how annoying it is to edit this on an iPhone. You only get 2x speed up. This that you're watching is 8x speed up. And now how did I do that? By exporting this many times. Well, it was 3 times. But I did it once to go 2x, right? I just edited all the leaf blowing together and 2x'd it. That took like 45 minutes to export. And the only reason I'm rambling about this, by the way, is just because we're just blowing leaves. So I'm just going to ramble about the editing process. Anyway, the second time I exported it to get 4x, right? So I'm 2xing the 2x footage to get 4x. It took like 30 minutes. So we're already an hour and 15 in to get 4x. So then I went for the 8x, and that actually took 20 minutes. So it took nearly 2 hours just to get this like as fast as you're watching it. And it's still like, I think this was something like 23 minutes of trim or of blowing out the beds and stuff, and blowing leaves out of the yard. But it was very difficult to get this to be this quick. You know, I was like, I can't make people sit through a 2-hour video just because I can't edit comfortably. I'm gonna bite the bullet, and I'm just gonna speed it multiple times and just keep exporting it. But I don't know, man. I think leaf blowing out of like beds and stuff is so satisfying because you can just go around everything and just watching everything come out, as long as it's smooth and like this one, where everything just blows out pretty easily from the beds. The only thing I hate about blowing leaves is the wind. And when I say I hate it, man, I despise the wind. And I know it's an insane thing, but like, it just seems like it never ever wants to work with you. And then when it does, it's like it's for half a second, you know. So it's like, I'm just kidding, I'm just gonna blow this all in your face now. You know, you think you got good momentum, and the wind's just like, nope, punishment, you're getting too much done. But no, I think I've only quit a leaf job out of frustration twice since 2016 when I started, and it was just because it was so windy that I just you literally, you know, it was impossible to get these 2 jobs done. And when I say impossible, I mean, on the one, for example, the lady came out and she was like, do you want to just come try another day? Because, and this was when I first started, like way back when. And she comes out, she's like, do you want to try this another day? It's awfully windy. And I said, yes, I would love to try this another day. Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith, or, you know, whatever her name was. And I don't want to say her name. I know her name. I don't want to say it. You know, I'm not being rude or forgetful. I'm actually being very considerate of this person's privacy. Anyway, yeah, leaves are probably the most satisfying if you actually get to accomplish the job, and the most frustrating if you're in a situation where the wind is against you. And the wind was very much against me on this one, you know, just to say the least. It's one of those things where, like, you just have to keep stopping, and then it ends up being like you spend 2 hours just blowing leaves. And like, I'm not even blowing them that far. Like, when I do leaves, I go to mulch them. I just want to mulch them away from the house because of rocks and sticks and stuff that get underneath the leaves, and they'll get lodged in the middle of the leaf pile, so your mower will just fling it at a window. So I just blow the pile away from the house, and then I'll mulch it at a safe distance, or a safer distance. There is no really safe distance. You know, I've flung one house that I've broken a window at was, and it's the only place I've ever broken a window. I flung a thick piece of metal wire, or like metal something, I don't know what it was, but it was like a thick metal wire, and I flung it, I mean, it had to be 5 car lengths just across her property, and it went right directly through her window, right at the head of a chair. So pretty much, if someone was like sitting in that chair by the window reading, they would have been like seriously injured. So I always try to get as far away from the house as I can before I mulch. But it's, I mean, even that is not always like a perfect solution. I mean, just, I only have that one example, of course, but ever since then, it's like, it's always this underlying fear of like, God, like, what if there's something, like, what if something happens with this, you know? And it does on occasion. You know, things happen. You know, it's part of life. But anyway, back to what's on screen. We're just blowing things off. I got tired of holding the camera, and we had a good opportunity to show, you know, actually walking around and doing the things. I'm pulling the flowers out here because I'm replacing these. That bed that I'm actually in there was infested with ants big time, and you'll see that in the part 2 video as I get it edited. Now we're going down and trimming, just cutting down the lilies, tidying them up, and I'll blow these out, you know, again. I actually went around and trimmed the whole property, but I was running out of phone battery, so I didn't record the whole thing of trimming because, again, it's one of the more mundane bits of a cleanup job. Nobody wants to see someone trimming. Well, I don't know. You guys are weirdos. Y'all might want to see it, right? I watch people trim their lawns all the time. What am I saying? So, anyway, I don't do the whole trimming bit, but you'll get more of that later on the channel, I'm sure. Okay, and so here we go to mulch the leaves. And the way that I do this is multiple passes, try to push them sort of in one direction on the highest setting, so your transport setting on the mower, just all the way up on the deck. It's really just to start the process of mincing up the leaves, chopping them up finely before you start cutting the grass, because if you chop them up beforehand, before you actually start lowering the deck and cutting the grass, you'll get a much cleaner cut and a much nicer look out of your mulched up leaves. This one being just a weedy yard and mulching up leaves and just trying to get it as tidy as possible. Cut down to 2 inches. It's not a turf or anything, it's just weeds. We're just trying to clean up the leaves and make it look nice and clean, which it does at the end. You'll actually see in the video. But yeah, with leaves, just do multiple passes. Again, this took me, I think I had 30 minutes of footage of just mulching leaves basically, and I cut it down to 6, and it took me like another 2 hours to do. So, you know, but thankfully I won't have to do that much longer. And here in a minute you will see sort of what this whole thing looks like. I think I go to the other side of the yard here in just a minute to start mulching up those leaves. All right, so here's the other side of the yard, and it's the same procedure, man. Basically go highest setting, drop it down to about a 4, and then drop it down to about a 3, and then a 2. And you know, it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to make that many passes, but just when it's chopped up to a certain amount, you drop it, and then it's chopped up a little bit more, you drop it more. So, and it doesn't have to be that you do, so let's say you have a section of lawn that takes 20 passes to cut. You don't have to make 20 passes on 5, 20 passes on 4. You just do it till it looks like you can lower the deck and not bog your whole engine down, basically. Because if I were to just drop it straight to 2 and then go over these leaves, the engine would die. Even though it is a 31 horse engine, you know, it would bog it down. It would bog any mower down. And so just do it little bit by bit. I don't even do like proper passes on the first few heights. I'm just trying to tackle the biggest pile, right? And then when I set it down to 2, I'll make my proper full length passes like you're seeing right here. And it really spreads things out and just cleans things up a lot. And typically when I get down to my last height, which is 2 inches, I will do a double cut. That way it just really cleans it up nicely. And here I'm on my second pass, and you can actually see it's kind of like a printer. It just makes a nice, clean, leafless look.
I've been acting like a wild man, sleeping like a child. You're so luminous and vibrant. I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom. Always in bloom for
you. So here we are at the end of day 1. Well, I guess part 1, because I do continue going on this day that you're watching on screen, but I decided to do the mulch in another video, and I also do flowers in another video. But this one's shaping up to be a good little landscape, and tomorrow you'll see part 2, which will have the mulching process and changing out all of the flowers. Hope you enjoyed. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you.